All right, guys, fear not. We're not doing politics today. I'm just here to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving and tell you a little bit about what we're celebrating today. Before I do that, though, I just hope that you're all getting a moment to step away from the chaos, get away from the headlines and the endless doom scrolling, because there is an awful lot to be thankful for right now. So let's talk about what Thanksgiving is all about. Do you know that Thanksgiving goes all the way back to 1621, when the Pilgrims, who had lost almost half their people during their first brutal winter, sat down with the Wampanoag tribe. The Wampanoag had taught them how to plant crops, how to fish the waters, and how to survive on this land. And that first Thanksgiving meal likely lasted 3 days, filled with wild game, corn, and whatever else they could gather. They weren't celebrating perfection. They were celebrating survival, cooperation, and the belief that tomorrow could be better than yesterday. That spirit is baked right into what it means to be American. And then, more than 2 centuries later, Abraham Lincoln declared Thanksgiving a national holiday in the middle of the Civil War. Think about that. When American families were literally fighting each other, when the future of the nation was totally uncertain, Lincoln still believed that pausing to give thanks could unite us, that it could remind us of the better angels of our nature. Today in 2025, we have our own divisions and challenges, but we also have extraordinary freedoms. The freedom to speak, the freedom to think, to gather, to pursue our dreams. These are things people throughout history could only imagine, and they're worth slowing down and appreciating. So take a moment today, maybe between the turkey and the pumpkin pie, to think about all the people who show up for you, the opportunities you've had, and the simple fact that you live in a country that still believes in the individual, in liberty, and the possibility of a better future. Enjoy the day, everyone. Enjoy your loved ones. And if nothing else, be grateful you're not stuck doing the dishes. I got to get in the oven. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. I'm Dave Rubin, and these are 10 things I'm grateful for. Can you glaze yourself? Probably not on camera. That's not a great idea. All right, guys, Thanksgiving season is here, and instead of drubbing you over the head with endless politics and culture war fights, I thought we'd just talk about 10 things that I really am thankful and grateful for. And don't worry, I'm not gonna do family and friends and all that stuff. Yes, we get it, okay, fine. Yes, it doesn't have to be so corny. We're doing stuff. That's what we're doing today. So here we go. First off, this will not come as a surprise to anybody. I am very thankful for basketball. Not only basketball, the game, but literally this ball, which was used in a 1992 Trailblazers basketball game, signed by my man Clyde Drexler right there, number 22. But as you know, I play a ton of basketball, and dare I say, at the ripe old age of 49, I'm probably better than I was 10 years ago, if that's possible, even though I blew out my knee, and I did get the stem cells this year, which I'm also thankful for. But I just love it. I love those 3 hours a couple times a week when I can just stop thinking about the madness and focus on the love of the game. So that is number one. Number two, slightly connected to basketball, is what is on my finger right here, which is my Oura Ring. Not sponsored, by the way, but the Oura Ring, which tracks all your metrics related to sleep and workout and all the stuff, how many steps you're taking, calories you're burning, and all that. It definitely has been part of my glow up. And as I sit here right now, I think I'm at my lowest weight in about 15 years, something like that. Feeling pretty good for middle age. And then my third is the big green egg. As long as we're sticking with fitness and health, this probably goes a little bit more on the what I'm eating that's not perfectly fit, but this is a lot of barbecue, a lot of brisket, and I just love that thing. I love setting it and forgetting it, although sometimes you gotta get in there and flip things, whether I'm making brisket or whether I'm doing a tomahawk, or we're doing it caveman style, which is at the end after you smoke something, when you just rip the grate off and you throw the meat to sear it right on those flames, the way the cavemen did back in the day. I just love cooking on that thing and getting that deep, rich flavor and that great bark on that, and it just wows everybody every time. What else am I thankful for? Well, I'm thankful for these because, well, I've just glazed my own glow up over the last couple of years and some fitness things. Can you glaze yourself? Probably not on camera. That's not a great idea. Or at least not on YouTube. My glasses, because something happened. It just started this year. I just have the thing that comes with age, with close reading. I went to the optometrist, they checked everything. They said, this is it. You just have whatever it's called. I can't even remember, but it's just like, you have the thing. There's nothing wrong with your eyes. And yes, I do need them every now and again. I used to mock all the newscasters who put them on to read something. But oh yeah, wow, I see everything now. It's just absolutely incredible. So I love my glasses here. The fifth thing that I'd like to mention will not come as any surprise for those of you who watch the show, which is my trusty Sharpie. I love the Sharpie. I love writing with the Sharpie. And something that I've noticed that a lot of you comment on this year is I'm constantly fiddling with the Sharpie while I'm doing the show. I'm flipping with the Sharpie and spinning the Sharpie, doing all sorts of things. It's going hand back and forth. I don't know what that is exactly. I think that there's so many thoughts going on in my head when I'm doing the show, and I do it just out of stream of conscious, that a little bit of hand motion kind of keeps me focused in a weird way. But there is something I like about it. I like signing things with a Sharpie. I like there's something tactile about writing on regular paper with something that's like a little bit more like a marker. Just love it. Another thing that I've never given a shout out, again, not a sponsor in any way whatsoever, but people have commented on the hair. And my hair product is Organ Ethic, which I found a couple of years ago while we were in Mexico. I forgot to bring my normal hair product, and just at the shop at the place we were at, they had this stuff. And it's kind of thick and gooey, but not over the top gooey. Nobody wants over the top gooey, right? And it's just right. Like, you can make some stuff happen with your hair, and it's just gonna kind of be there, and it'll have a little bit of motion and movement and all that. And it's just right, called Final Touch. Number 7, these are in no order, I should tell you, because this might be number 1. I mean, they could all be number 1, but Copal. I'm so proud of what we created here. As I always say, it is a beautiful, exquisite, light, fragrant, delicious reposado, which we were working on for about 3 years. It finally came out this past June. It's doing incredibly well. We've won a couple awards already, which is great. And it's just a great sipping tequila. You know, people still think that tequila is just doing shots of Jose Cuervo jumping in a pool and punching a midget, but that's not necessary. That's fine, but that's not the only thing that tequila is about. It's also about just like one big rock. Sip it slowly, enjoy it. You don't have to drink a lot. You know, you drink wine, you end up drinking a bottle of wine at night. You have 1 or 2 little glasses of these, you're good to go, and it's just light and refreshing and wonderful. And I'm so proud of what we've made with that. This one is an interesting one. This is my big Stan Lee, the official Stan Lee story Taschen comic book. So it's a compilation of just all of the characters and stories and comic books that Stan Lee made over the years. And the reason I love this more than anything else, even though I promise you no friends and family stuff, is because the boys absolutely love this thing, and they love opening up a page, and then we literally just open up a page, and here's Godzilla, and then I talk to them about Godzilla, and on any other page, here's Doctor Strange, and then I tell them Doctor Strange, or Hulk, or whatever it is. So it's like just something nice that like connects my generation with my kids' generation. I just love that. Number 9, again in no order, Jesus, this thing's huge, is the free state of Florida. I am so grateful, like truly, truly grateful to live in a place that aligns with my values, that is doing it right in a time when so many places are just doing it wrong. We are free, we are flourishing here. We've got beautiful weather and people and all of that stuff, but just a place that you can wake up and you know if something weird is happening, it's probably not happening here. And if it does happen here, we're gonna fix it. And then that becomes a magnet for so many great people to come down here and build things. And it's so cool to be in a place like Miami that I think is really the #1 city in the entire country right now, in the #1 state, and just to see it flourishing and building and growing. And I adore it, and I'm grateful for it and thankful for it. And number 10, although I promised not to be corny, is you guys, right? Like without you guys, my audience, my fans, you know, we crushed the 3 million subscriber thing on YouTube this year. Rumble's been blowing up. We traveled to Australia, we went to Hungary, we went to London, we went to Israel. That I can go all over the world and meet you guys and give you the 2-second hug, although some of you go in for the 3 to 4 second hug. I just love it. It's incredible. You know, I just tell you what I think here, and we try to make it funny and silly and all of those things. And the amount of love that I get back is it's tenfold, it's 1,000-fold, right? So I'm so grateful for you guys. So I hope everybody's having a great Thanksgiving weekend. I'm grateful for you, and we'll be back on Monday.
That is a world-class civet, but it is not the question that I asked you.
I read her book, by the way.
Iterates, he throws things out.
You're an insufferable twat. Nobody likes you.
Do you know of a rich tapestry of people that will engage with ideas?
How you doing, people? I'm Dave Rubin. This is the Rubin Report, and yes, the year continues to move by at a faster and faster pace. It is already November 3rd, 2025. How did it happen? We are live streaming on Rumble, YouTube, and Local. Share, subscribe, tap the notification bell if you have not. And before we dive into all of the political and cultural craziness, and I assure you there is plenty to do today, I'm super excited because look at this. Kopal just won its first award. We are now 1-for-1 in awards. We submitted and sent bottles of tequila to a bunch of different competitions, and I'm thrilled that our first win is from the 2025 Sunset International Spirits Competition. We won Best Reposado. We're up against all the big boys. We're up against all the ones that cost double, triple, quadruple the price. And Sunset Magazine, which actually is literally the only magazine that we subscribe to in this house that we still receive a paper copy of, is our first win. 97 out of 100 score. Look at that. Best of class gold, sweeps the round, orange peel balanced, well integrated, light toast, smooth. And you can get your bottle, so you have it for Thanksgiving at drinkopal.com. Oh, also, and real quick, I hope you had a good Halloween. I will admit, we had a great Halloween around here. It was very Ghostbusters heavy, as I've been telling you guys. I did have one small Reese's peanut butter cup. I controlled myself, but one cup was just enough to power me through the trick-or-treating. And we asked some of the Rubin Report newsletter people to send in some pictures of their costumes. There's a couple of them right there. And yeah, I hope everybody had a great weekend. And let's just dive in. There's a lot going on here. And Elon Musk was on the small, but I think powerful, they say, Joe Rogan podcast. That's what's going to kick us off. And then we'll get obviously to mamdani. The big New York City election is tomorrow, Trump on 60 Minutes, and a whole bunch more. So before we get into Elon on Rogan, much of what they talked about was the redistricting that is potentially happening in California. So I want to start with this quote from the New York Post, and we've talked a bit about this over the last week or so. Proposition 50, backed by Democratic Governor Gavin Newsom, would temporarily redraw the state's electoral maps in a way that could help Democrats flip 5 congressional seats in the 2026 midterms. The new maps were hastily hashed out in August in response to a similar redistricting scheme in Texas designed to hand more seats to the Republicans. It's a fight fire with fire strategy meant to balance the scales in Washington. As it currently stands, a bipartisan commission is in charge of California's maps, not the state's Democratic legislature. Prop 50 would give the legislature power to impose its own electoral maps for the 2026, 2028, and 2030 elections. Newsom and his supporters are pretty transparent about their motives. The ballot item clearly states that Prop 50 authorizes temporary changes to congressional district maps in response to Texas's partisan redistricting. Okay, so let me say something that I said last Friday when we had Clay and Buck on, and we covered this a little bit, which is that both sides do this. This is what gerrymandering is. And if you look at maps, like if you look at a map of a state, and a state kind of looks like a square, and then you start looking at how the districts look, they often make no sense. They're like these crazy shapes that really just don't look like they would be sensible. It's literally something like that, almost like a straw maze or something. But What California now is trying to do is do something that's temporary, which we know, of course, anything that's temporary is usually not when it comes to the government, and basically circumvent the system they have in place to keep it somewhat fair by giving all the power to their Democrat-run legislature. As everyone knows, it's a one-party state. Gavin Newsom's in charge, et cetera, et cetera. So now let's jump over to Elon on Rogan, because here he is calmly explaining exactly what is going on in California and with the Democrats writ large.
And by the way, it's a strategy that, if allowed to work, would work. And in fact, has worked. California is supermajority Democrat.
Yeah.
And there's so much gerrymandering that occurs. It's crazy. So
I'm sure you're paying attention to this Proposition 50 thing.
No,
that's the thing in California where they're trying to redo districts.
Oh, yeah. Because, I mean, California's already gerrymandered like crazy.
Yeah.
They want to gerrymander it even more. And I mean,
because it keeps moving further and further right. Like, if you look at the map of California, each voting cycle, more and more people are waking up and going, what the f***? Yeah.
And then here's another thing that is very important. Fact that is actually not disputed by either side, which is that when we do the census in the United States, the way the census works for apportionment of congressional seats and electoral college votes for the president is by number of persons in a state, not number of citizens.
Right.
It's number of people. So you could literally be a tourist, and you will count.
Okay, so that is the key part here. So everyone gets it. Both sides do the redistricting. They both do the gerrymandering. Texas did it one way. Cali's doing it the other. We can all blame everybody for that. Newsom can tell us it's temporary. We know it won't be, all of those things. But the last part of what Elon said there is the key part, because it is so absolutely bananas, you don't think it could be real, and yet it is. When they do the census, it is not the citizens they are counting, it is the amount of people there. Do you get why the Democrats, and this is what for basically 2 years Elon and some other people have been saying, that the Democrats are importing new voters. That's why the Biden administration, the auto pen, wanted to open up the borders, because they were purging voters, right? Because their ideas are not really good. It seems to be working in big cities, and we'll get to New York in a little bit. But overall, the map of the country is getting more red. People are waking up to this nonsense. So what would you have to do if you can't bring people over via good policy? Then what would you do? You might just import a whole new voter class. And the idea that the census is counting people as opposed to citizens is completely insane. And yet, in the times we live in, I suppose it's profoundly obvious. Here's a bit more from Elon.
So that means that the more illegals that California and New York can import by the time the census happens in 2030, the more congressional seats they will have, and the more presidential electoral college votes they will have. So they're trying to get as many illegals in as possible ahead of the census, and because all human beings, even tourists, count for the census. So if the census then would award more congressional seats to California because of a vast number of illegals, and New York and Illinois, so they'll get more congressional seats. They'll get more presidential electoral college votes, that would get them the House, a majority in the House, and they would get to decide who is president.
So now the picture is starting to become a little bit clearer, right? If they import these people and they get more congressional seats, okay, now you could get the House back, right? And it's not because your ideas were good, it's because you brought in people, and then what do? They give them a lot of stuff, right? This is socialism 101. So, oh my God, you got into the country, even though we tell you the country's horrible and it's racist and all of those things, but you got into the country. We're the ones that then give you, I don't know, free housing or free food or whatever the laundry list of idiotic socialist ideas are. And then these people that just came in then become dependent on the state. And then there's one party that says, oh, the state will just keep giving you more. And then the other party is like, well, A, maybe you shouldn't be here in the first place. And B, why should we be taking from legal citizens to give you stuff? You're probably not going to vote for that party. So you will keep a perpetual class of lower class people beholden to the Democrat Party. This is not conspiratorial. This is not pie in the sky stuff. This is just fairly obvious. Now, Gavin Newsom, who again I believe is the devil incarnate, I believe that someday we will find out, the paperwork will get through the system, and it will, well, it turned out he was the devil. Here he is being interviewed by Kristen Welker, who shows Newsom the video that we played you last week where Schwarzenegger basically says Prop 50 is a scam and it's not going to be temporary. And here's Newsom's response.
Predecessor, former Republican Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger disagrees with this effort. He's been one of your most vocal critics.
I think that Prop 50 is a big scam. And the reason why I'm saying that is because it says that we should fight Trump and because he's a threat to democracy. But in the meantime, they want to go and tear up the Constitution in California, get rid of the independent commission that draws the district lines and take the power away from the people and give it back to the politicians.
What do you say to Governor Schwarzenegger, who says the fight for Prop 50 is just a big scam?
Well, former Republican Arnold Schwarzenegger, who's in all the Republican ads, is wrong on a number of points that he just made. First of all, we're not throwing out the independent redistricting. We're affirming national independent redistricting. We're maintaining our current independent redistricting for statewide races, but in response to what happened in Texas, temporarily changing the maps for 3 cycles for the congressional races.
All right, before I chime in here, let's go to this quote from Milton Friedman. Nothing is so permanent as a temporary government program. That is the point. First of all, and he lied. I mean, he flat out lied there. They are, as the Daily Wire article pointed out, they are circumventing the independent commission that normally deals with this, and they're handing it to the Democrat supermajority legislature for 3 election cycles. And then you get to the Milton Friedman quote. It's like, do you think they're suddenly going to be like, well, we did get more Democrats and we repressed the Republican vote. Let's go back to the other thing. No, that's just not how it works. But let's unpack his lies a little bit more. California Republican congressman who did run in the recall. I was obviously campaigning with Larry Elder, but Kevin Kiley ran also as a Republican against Gavin Newsom. He put this up. Gavin Newsom just blatantly lied about Prop 50 on Meet the Press. He said the maps are in the ballot, they're in front of the voters. Here's my ballot. Do you see a map? And what you're seeing there is Prop 50, and you can vote yes or no, authorizes temporary changes to congressional district maps in response to Texas's partisan redistricting legislative constitutional amendment. And no, even though Gavin Newsom said you will see the maps right in front of you on the ballot, they are not there. Now, out of all of the clips over the years, the hundreds, if not thousands of clips of Gavin Newsom that we've played, and you know, I always say I have, well, what am I doing now? I've decided as of last week, because I don't like hatred in my heart, I have a little lockbox in my heart, a Al Gore style lockbox in my heart. That's where I can just hold a little bit of hatred, and every now and again I purge it, and then I have to refill it. It just kind of is what it is. It's the only way I can functionally do this and remain a human being. I do have the hatred for him. It's in the lockbox there. And we play all these clips of him, and he lies about everything, right? He absolutely lies about everything. He shows no remorse. He shows no contrition. He doesn't mind going to French Laundry with lobbyists without wearing masks while he locks people at home. He has destroyed the state. He just ushered in wokeness, just everything about him. And all of that being said, it might be literally thousands of clips we've shown of him. This is the single worst clip ever. Go.
You've said, as we've discussed, you are considering a run for president, and you've said you'll make a decision about whether to run for president after the midterms.
Yeah, I mean,
Governor, let me ask you, why do you want to be president?
I don't. I'm not suggesting I am. I'm saying, in response to someone talked about it, and I hate when nothing I dislike more than the politician that sits there and lies to you. And we all just sit there rolling our eyes going, give me a break. So as it relates to that, there's nothing on the right. I'm focused on Prop 50. I'm focusing on fair and free elections.
Lockbox, serenity now, lockbox. Do you see what he did there? Nothing. He hates nothing more than the politician that sits there and lies to you. And then in the same breath, literally the same breath, he lied, because he then pretends that this has nothing to do with him running for president. I don't know. I don't know if someone's talking about it, but it's all about you running for president. So he's telling you there's nothing he hates more than a liar as he lies to you. I mean it at the human level, not the political level. I can have a difference of opinion on politics with people, and I may dislike their politics and their attitude and all of those things, but at the human level, I don't know how he does it. And that's why I think he is a lizard person. I don't think it's possible to be a functioning human being and lie about everything all the time and never show any bit of humility around any of it. How did he do that? That is a skill. And maybe, as Clay Travis pointed out on Friday, like that is the ultimate skill that will win over the Democrats because their ideas are just so bad. They just want the best liar, right? He doesn't strike me as a particularly good liar, but maybe it's good enough that it fools a lot of people, but we shall see. But man, oh man, oh man. Anyway, boner pills, and then more on the other side.
Blue Chew is basically the upgrade button for your sex life. These chewable tablets are designed to deliver stronger, harder, and longer-lasting erections without the hoops. No waiting rooms, no pharmacy lines, and no awkward doctor visits. Just a quick online consultation, and once you're approved by a licensed medical professional, Blue Chew sends your tablets straight to your door in discreet packaging. Blue Chew's tablets are made in the USA and prepared and shipped directly to you. The best part, it's all done online. That means no hassle, no embarrassment, just a smarter, simpler way to handle things. Great sex is just a few clicks away. Sign up at BlueChew.com and make life easier by getting harder. Discover your options today at BlueChew.com. Simple as that. And we've got a special offer for our listeners. Try the first month of Blue Chew free when you use promo code Rubin and just pay $5 shipping. That's promo code Rubin. Visit BlueChew.com for more details and important safety information.
All right, so let's do a little more from Elon here because, interestingly, we are now, 5 weeks? How many days into the government shutdown are we? I need to know the exact number of days because without the government, I can't get much done during the day-to-day basis here on the show. It's about 5 weeks, something like that, right? It's 5 weeks exactly. How many days? He'll get it to me. He'll get me. All right, 5 weeks. 5 weeks. He'll get me. I want an exact number of days, for God's sakes. Use a calculator, an abacus, something. 34 days. Thank you very much. Okay, so the government has been shut down. Again, it seems to me mostly things are working. I know there's been a little bit of stuff with airlines. Maybe your mail's a little bit slower, but there is this fight. The fight mostly is a fight within the Democrat Party because all they would have to do to open up the government, it could be opened up by the time I finish this sentence. All you would need is about 7 Democrats, Senate Democrats to jump over, get a clean resolution, which is what they always do. The government would open, but they don't want to do it, so they are not doing it. Interestingly, here is Elon now explaining how the Democrats want the shutdown. And again, it is connected to, I guess, what you would call their illegal vote scheme.
The reason you have the standoff is because if the hundreds of billions of dollars to create a financial incentive to have this giant magnet to attract illegals from every part of Earth to these states, if that is turned off, the illegals will leave because they're no longer being paid to come to the United States and stay here.
Wow.
And then they will lose a lot of voters. The Democratic Party will lose a lot of voters.
And they would have a very difficult job if this is kicked out of reintroducing it into a new bill.
Yes.
Especially once things start normalizing.
Yes. So in a nutshell, the Democratic Party wants to destroy democracy by importing voters, and the Republican Party disagrees with that.
And the ruse is that if you don't accept what they're doing, then you're a threat to democracy.
Yes.
Okay, so there's a couple things there. So he basically is pointing out that the magnet that he's talking about is what I said before. The magnet is the government programs, right? The government programs come to this country, even though we tell you this country is systemically racist and evil and capitalistic and all the horrible things, right? This is the main sort of reason for existing of the Democrats, is to tell us how bad the country is, but also that everyone should come here and share in the horror, right? But the magnet is the government programs, because once you bring all the people, then they become dependent, right? Now you shut that off, and then those people, well, first off, they already have a first problem. The border is now shut. So Trump has cut them off at the pass in one way, right? Because the flood of people that were coming in are now being stopped. So that's one issue. But
the certain amount of people who are here illegally, and we think it was about 21 million people in 4 years, and then, I don't know, they say it's around 12 million people before that, like the Dreamer type people. So let's say there's about 30 million of these people that are illegals that are here. The only way you can for sure keep them as Democrats is if you keep giving them stuff, right? It's interesting because then he says, and the Republicans don't want that. He's basically like, the Democrats want to destroy democracy, the Republicans don't. The Democrats, who's left? This is the interesting thing. Who's left as a Democrat? And I want you to think about this in your own life. Think about your friends right now that are Democrats. If they're not like completely far left, socialist, Marxist, mamdani, Hamas, genderqueer, unicorn, two-spirit, blah, blah, blah. If they're not that thing, then what makes someone a Democrat at this point? What would be a sensible Democrat policy? Well, there really are none, which is why John Fetterman, we'll have a video or two of him in a few minutes, why he's now the outlier in the party. There's no policy. What policy of the Democrats makes sense anymore? Every policy is tax, tax, tax. Every policy is free, free, free. Open the borders. We're for all the woke stuff. So because of that, the decent, America-loving, marginal, and I mean this politically, like someone that doesn't really care about politics, you're just not that interested in that anymore. And then you have the Republicans who are kind of like, for all their problems, they basically don't hate the country. That's pretty appealing to a lot of people. And who ushered in a sort of wide tent Republican thing that's appealing to a lot of people? It's a man by the name of Donald Trump. I don't know if you've ever heard of him. Here he is with Norah O'Donnell saying that he refuses to be extorted by the Democrats. He's completely right. And when I always tell you that this is where he's leveled up and this is what Trump 2.0 is, first off, he's leveled up because he's not taking her nonsense. In the old days, in those interviews, he might have offered some sort of concession or something because he wanted to be liked. He's completely over that. And I think he actually understands the game of politics better now. The Democrats, he's right. They have lost their way. Norah O'Donnell, the question actually, your follow-up tomorrow, let's say, with another guest should be bring a Democrat on and say, why can't, if this is all so important to you, the healthcare situation and the money for illegals and all of the stuff that you want, if it's all so important for you, then why not just get 7 senators to vote for a clean resolution and then we'll move forward and discuss all of those issues. But Trump now has learned he will not be extorted by them. And then at the end of the day, what is politics? Well, it's just, in some sense, it's just a constant game of popularity. And I think, as we are now 34 days into this shutdown, I don't think it's costing the Republicans anything. I actually don't think it's costing the Democrats a ton either. I think their base is probably a little more annoyed because they want the programs and they want some of the money for illegals and that stuff. But as a general rule, I don't know a lot of people that really care about this. Even at a cursory level, looking on X, like people are not really talking about the shutdown. They're talking about a lot of other things. So there's just no reason for Trump to make a concession here and be like, okay, illegals should get health care and we basically should expand Obamacare and everything else. It simply does not work. Here's Scott Besson explaining to Jake Tapper that if the Democrats want to open this thing, they can do it pretty freaking easily.
President Trump just truthed out that he needs to hear from the courts how this is going to be done. And Jake, as you know, the best way for SNAP benefits to get paid is for Democrats, 5 Democrats to cross the aisle and reopen the government.
Right, but there is this contingency fund, and as recently as September 30th, the Agricultural Department had a memo saying that these funds, the contingency funds, I think it's about $5 or $6 billion, could be used to pay these benefits. Now, it would only be 2 or 3 weeks, but that's a lot for people who need the food.
Well, President Trump just, as I said, President Trump just truthed out that he's very anxious to get this done, and it's got to go through the courts. The courts keep jamming up things. Democrats are in the middle of a civil war, and they should just open the government. That is the easiest way to do this.
Okay, so I want to call balls and strikes here. So as far as I understand it, Tapper is correct. There is a certain amount of money that the president could just release right now without ending the shutdown that would allow for the SNAP situation to be paid out for about 2 or 3 weeks. That does seem to be true. Okay, so let's just put that aside for a second. That might be Trump playing a little bit of politics there. Like he does want a little bit of a pain point. I think that's fair to say. But again, it's 5. I keep saying 6 or 7. It's 5 senators. That's all they need to jump over, and then they could get this all funded immediately. So supposedly there are 42 million, we just checked it, 42 million people on SNAP. Out of that, 39% are children, 30% are elderly. First off, the idea that 42 million people in America, there's about 350 million people in America, so that's basically 10%.
of Americans are dependent on the government for food. That seems very bizarre to me. Now, I'm not saying it's 11.5% basically. I'm not saying that that there should be no programs whatsoever. I think you can absolutely make like a completely libertarian argument that there should be no government programs. But to whatever extent we have these programs, it seems crazy to me that about 11.5% of people need these programs. And that also goes to what one of the things the government does. Their things are temporary and then they're permanent. Like, how many of these people got on these things because they lost a job and they needed like a little something to bridge the gap before they had a new job, or they got into a new home, or got help from friends or family or their local church or synagogue or whatever that might be. And then they just stay on these things forever. Like, the real question always is not, it's the amount of money that the government is wasting, not the amount that the government takes in. Do we need to have 42 million people on these things? Or is it actually closer to, I don't know, 12 million people? Like, I actually don't know the answer to that, but that's the type of thing that a functional government would be looking into. Let's go back to Norah O'Donnell. Here she gets Trump to try to condemn ICE, but once again, he has leveled up and he ain't doing it. Like, somebody smashed a window and pushed a lady. Oh my God, Trump is doing what he promised to do, which is clean up our cities. The Democrat mayors don't want them cleaned up. They're not doing anything. He gave them months and months of time. Remember, when he came in, he said, you guys have a couple months here, clean up your cities or we're going to do something. And they did not do it. And now he's going ahead and doing it. And in DC, there is basically zero crime now because of this, right? Also, Norah, might I offer you a little journalistic something? If you're concerned about, say, a broken window in a car, and I know that is an awful lot, or you're concerned about a lady that got pushed and a few other things, maybe next time the Democrats are burning down a city or taking over the streets or waving the flags of terrorist organizations while chanting for genocide and things of that nature, maybe you want to ask some Democrats about that. You could try that. Now, you might say, but Donald Trump, he's a mean man with his orange skin and his crazy hair. He's just a mean man who wants to push ladies on the floor and break car windows. And he's doing this for no reason. To that, I would say, watch this video.
The courtyard of a Rogers Park apartment complex echoed with the voices of renters and tenant advocates, united in protest against what they describe extreme rent hikes and unsafe living conditions across several buildings around Fargo and Damon Avenues. Tenants from 4 buildings owned by the same landlord came together and formed a union known as Fuerzas Activas de la Damon.
En estos momentos en que ICE está aterrorizando a nuestra gente.
Right now that ICE is terrorizing our community, our landlord is trying to nearly double the rent, says another longtime renter. Tenants say ramped up immigration enforcement has made it challenging for them to go to work. They warn that if the requests are not met, they are prepared to strike.
It's more than just rent. It's a fight for dignity, for justice, and for community, for all tenants across the city.
Tenants say if their landlord doesn't address their demands, they'll move forward with the rent strike starting November.
All right, so there's a couple things here to the backdrop of what's about to happen in New York City. First off, landlords have every right. They own the building. They are the lord of the land, and they own the building, and they own the apartment, and they can do what they want with the rent, right? And the more that you get people to build and the more buildings you get, then you get more competition. And then over time, you can't just keep increasing rent because then someone else will come in with lower rent. That's the beauty of capitalism, right? There's a constant monetary movement throughout the system. So the landlord there, I don't know exactly everything about the specific guy, but it's like he's not just increasing the rent to just kick people out because he's a mean man. He's probably, if he's doing it at all, he's probably doing it because the market dictates, oh, I bought this building, I pay for the repairs, I paint the walls and put in new windows, et cetera, and I've had these people in this building and they are paying less than what it is worth. So you are allowed to raise the rent. That is one thing, okay? That's one part of it. The other part of it is if ICE is showing up at these buildings, ICE doesn't take people who are here legally out of the country. It takes illegals. So it seems that there are a lot of illegals in this building. And also the fact, and we'll get to this a little bit more on this in just a second, the fact that the people are not speaking English. Again, if you just keep bringing people into this country, this is not anti-Mexican or anti-anything else at all. There are all sorts of good people who speak all sorts of languages who want to come to America the right way and be part of the dream, and that's what we all want, or that's what I want. But if you come here and you don't integrate properly and you don't learn the language and you came here illegally in the first place, and then you demand that the state gives you things, or you demand that your landlord not charge what he wants to charge, like, you're not really partaking in the American dream the way it's supposed to be. Speaking of which, listen to this from the leading report. Omar Fateh plans to alert illegals before any ICE raids occur in Minnesota. That's the guy who was in the movie with Tom Hanks on the boat, who now apparently is running for, what was that movie? What was it? What was that movie? Captain Jack, Captain Phillips, whatever. Okay. But that is illegal, by the way. It is illegal for a public official to warn citizens that ICE is coming. It is 100% illegal. That guy should probably be deported, but good luck with all of that, Minnesota. One of the things that, of course, has happened with the Democrat Party is as they've gone so crazy, they have purged all the good people out, as you know. Pete Buttigieg, who was our transportation secretary, not because he knew anything about transportation, but because he's gay. Not that anything's wrong with that, but it shouldn't be the qualification for your job. He went on the All In podcast, and the All In guys, we've shown you many clips of the years over from these guys. They basically were all moderate Democrats. Maybe David Sachs was a Republican, but the rest of them were all moderate Democrats who have, I think, all left the party at this point, or at least probably not voting Democrat anymore. They brought Pete Buttigieg on as a guest, and they got into this thing about immigration and some of Trump's tactics. And listen to what Chamath responds with Buttigieg when it comes to illegal immigration.
I think he thrives on a politics of fear. I think chaos is good for him. I think he thrives on chaos. I think when you see images of people getting beaten up, or, you know, what he used to call American carnage, like anything that validates that, basically the worse it's a weird thing, but the worse it feels to be in this country, the better off Donald Trump is, whether he's running for president or whether he is president. And sending troops marching into the streets.
Can I just say, as the only immigrant right now on this podcast who immigrated here legally, I feel much safer and better under a Donald Trump presidency than I ever did under a Biden presidency. Just want you to hear it from my mouth for what that's worth.
Do you feel safer about the fact that a Latino doctor crossing the street in Washington, D.C. Is getting hassled or harassed because they're brown?
I don't think that I've heard that. Now,
okay, so you're not aware of any case in which a U.S. citizen who is
no,
like you're
no, but I will tell you, for example, after 9/11.
Wait, you're on a podcast commenting about immigration. Surely you have some level of awareness.
Let me tell you. After 9/11, for example, for years I had SSS on my boarding passes, and I was pulled over constantly, and people probably thought that I was a Muslim hijacker. Mm-hmm. So I know what it feels like to be harassed, and what I'm telling you categorically is I feel safer in this presidency than I have ever felt. And I'm just letting you know that. It's just my lived experience.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
I'm glad you feel safer. I'm worried about how most Americans
are awful. First off, Chamath, you could have even gone farther. So that's nice to know that your anecdotal lived experience feels safer. That's great. And that's true. I have no doubt. But you should have said, I really driven the point home. What Pete kept trying to do there was, so you've never heard of any instance of anyone feeling unsafe? Again, show me the legal citizen of the United States who has been kicked out. If anything, Pete, what you're doing there is you're accidentally admitting that everything that Elon just told Rogan about why you want these people here is true. And by the way, if you feel unsafe, there's a difference between feeling unsafe and actually being unsafe, right? If you're a legal Latino immigrant, that's so stupid. If you're just a legal citizen of the United States who happens to be Latino, you have literally nothing to fear. There is literally no reason to fear. You have a citizenship document, you have a driver's license, you're legally here, and ICE is not coming to kick you out. Now, is it possible that when ICE goes to a building like we just showed you in Chicago there, and they know that, I don't know, let's say 30 of the residents out of 200 of them are illegal, is it possible that they're going to question some of the people who are legal? Of course it is. Of course, they have to figure out who is who. That's part of the problem by allowing all these people in. We don't know who's even here in the first place, and there could be 7 illegals living in an apartment that's supposed to, that's a 1-bedroom apartment, and you got to decipher whose apartment is it. Are they legal? So yes, people could be questioned, but that's a difference between feeling some level of fear and actually being fearful. The only people that should be fearful about what's happening right now are the illegals. But also, Pete, what I would welcome you to come on the show and we could discuss is why is it that you are never concerned about the legal citizen who is in the United States who has to deal with the crime or who has to deal with the drugs that came into their community or who has to pay more in taxes so we can put those people on the dole, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I think we know the answer to that already. It's what Elon's been talking about. But now let's jump to the one sane Democrat. I'm talking about John Fetterman, of course, and here he is explaining that Democrats suck.
And that's why we happen to agree. We need to secure our border. I'm very, very pro-immigration, always have been, still is. But two things must be true. We need to secure our border. And then I do say that my party has done a bad job about our border. Absolutely, undeniable. And that's why I joined her. And I thought that we have the appropriate numbers of votes to do it. And that's exactly what happened. And like the Iranian, like that was, I really kind of led that charge. I'm like,
all right, so, he still speaks in sort of half sentences or whatever, but his point basically, look, the Democrats screwed over the border. They've screwed up with this illegal thing. He doesn't understand why. And again, I just think, John, you're an outlier at the party at this point, but you might be giving a hint to someone like Pete, because if we quickly went through the list, who's going to run for the Democrats in 28? You got Newsom for sure, right? It looks like Pritzker is going to run. He's equally awful, but the two of them, they're basically the same, right? They come off as like not totally psychotic, woke, America-hating lunatics. They're just awful, generic politicians. But let's say Buttigieg probably gets thrown in there, right? Who else? There's a slim chance you get an AOC. Bernie will be too old. Then you probably get like some celebrity like a Mark Cuban or something. But the point there is, if you're Pete Buttigieg, might you want to listen to Fetterman? And next time you go on the All In podcast, be like, you know what? We really did screw up the border. We absolutely did. I am sympathetic to the average American who does not want an illegal, sitting in the vestibule of their apartment and getting all these benefits and blah, 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 blah. But I get it. You're a Democrat and you're afraid if you say anything sane that the clown car posse of lunatics will destroy you. And in that case, you'd actually be right. Let's talk about Harvest Right for just a second, and then we'll have a bit more on the Democrat craziness before we get to some sanity to finish the show, I promise you.
Let's face it, guys, eating healthy can be a challenge when life gets busy, but the Harvest Right freeze dryer has completely transformed the way one approaches meal prep. With the new single prep session, it's now possible to store homemade, nutrient-rich meals for months or even years without preservatives and without stress. From roasted vegetables to smoothie ingredients to full grain bowls, almost anything can be freeze-dried. When it's time to eat, just rehydrate a prepared meal and enjoy healthy, effortless food perfect for those always on the go. It's like having a reliable backup plan for every weeknight dinner emergency. Even snacks get a serious upgrade. Freeze-dried apples, strawberries, and mangoes become go-to treats, naturally sweet with no added sugar. They're not only satisfying, but also kid-approved. For anyone tired of relying on takeout or watching fresh produce go to waste, this is the kitchen upgrade that makes all the difference, and it's a serious money saver too. Take control of your meals at harvestright.com/Rubin.
Okay, so we'll continue with some Democrat craziness, but I want to show you this chart that will set up the segment for us. This is really interesting. So this is the CBP Southwest border encounter over the last basically 20 years. You're seeing starting in 2001. And as you can see, under Bush, we had a certain amount of illegal immigration, border crossings, and then it actually went down under Obama. And by the way, Obama did deport a ton of people too. Then Trump, it did go up a tiny bit and they wouldn't let him build the wall. And then, of course, the reason I'm showing you the chart is look at the hockey stick right there, right? This is where it went completely psychotic crazy under Joe Biden. And it was on its way. And then it started leveling off a little bit, but once people started talking about it a little bit more, but it was going crazy. Now, how do these things happen? Well, it partly happens because of bad policies, but the other part, of course, is that there are people that work for the administration and a mainstream media that lie to us about the very things that we can see in front of our eyes. Compilation.
The border is closed. The border is secure. The border is secure. The border is closed. The border is secure, and the border is not open.
We have a secure border.
I can tell you the border is secure.
By what measure is it secure now, sir? So there is not a common definition?
The president has done more to secure the border and to deal with this issue of immigration than anybody else. He really has. We're certainly doing a lot more to secure the border. As you know, the president has done everything that he can. He's done that alone without the help of Republicans.
Why aren't you guys stopping the flow at the border?
We are stopping the flow at the border.
We don't need to build a wall. This is a crisis of his own making. And by definition, just plain speak, basic English language definition, it is not an emergency.
All right, so you guys get that stuff. That's 101. They lie about all these things. It's the members of the media, it's the politicians. They tell us not to see what we can see, all of that. What that then leads to is people being confused about all of the issues because a certain amount of people still are, they haven't taken that red pill, they haven't watched The Matrix, they don't know what's going on. And then you end up with horrible politicians like the lady who ran for president, who soft-cooed the sitting auto pen, who wasn't qualified, who was a concentric circle of lunacy, but was backed by the establishment. And here is Hollywood superstar George Clooney on what Kamala Harris's mistake was.
We had a chance. I wanted there to be, as I wrote in the op-ed, a primary. Let's battle test this quickly and get it up and going. I think the mistake with it being Kamala is that she had to run against her own record. And it's very hard to do if the point of running is to say, I'm not that person. You know, it's hard to do. And so she was given a very tough task. I think it was a mistake, quite honestly, but we are where we are.
Yeah, we are where we are, which is that your party no longer has a leader. You, by the way, George Clooney, don't have to worry about it that much because you live in an $8.3 million chateau in France that spans 425 acres and has its own winery. You also sold Casamigos, which is a crapola tequila. Connor, I'm looking at you. You sold it for $1 billion. Might I recommend, George, next time you're buying some tequila, Copal, which just won Sunset Magazine's International Spirits Award for Best Reposado, 97 out of 100. Casamigos is crap. I will give you credit. Casa and Amigos, great name. You combined house and friends. Boom, really clever. $1 billion. What I have here is a great tequila. Anyway, yes, what you've done, what you guys all did. I mean, George, you might want to look in the mirror on this one because you guys backed Biden all the way, right? There's that very famous video, which we showed you at least a dozen times, of the huge fundraiser that George Clooney held for Joe Biden when Biden walked out and he had no idea where he was and Obama has to usher him off because he's not even sure where he's supposed to walk. So you're all part and parcel of the thing that you're now commenting on, right? It's like a Jake Tapper book. Like, you guys had everything to do with the cover-up, then you write a book about it. Here's another guy that had everything to do with all of the problems of the Democrat Party, talking to Kamala. This is Jon Stewart. And he asked John when he realized that, or when John asks Kamala when she realized that Biden was maybe not quite right.
I believe he was fully competent to serve.
Do you really?
Yeah, I do.
That surprises me, actually.
No, I do. There's a distinction to be made between running for president and being president.
What's the distinction?
Well, being a candidate for president of the United States is about being in a marathon at a sprinter's pace, having tomatoes thrown at you every step you take.
That sounds lovely.
Yeah, it's more than a notion.
Get involved in public service, ladies and gentlemen.
And to be the seated president, the sitting president, while doing that, it's a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah. I think it's a hard case to make for people that he didn't have the stamina to run, but he had the stamina to govern. Because I think most people view the presidency as a marathon run at a sprint with tomatoes being thrown at you in terms of governance.
She says it's not a notion. Everything she says is just meaningless. But John, yes, I've been very, very critical of you, and I do think you're pretty terrible. And when your interview with Mamdani last week, when you were like, there are underserved communities like Muslims and democratic socialists who haven't had representation, and they're getting it with you. Can you put your balls on my face? Like, yes, you're gross. You're gross. However, I will give you credit there. You kind of stuck it to her that obviously this was all just obvious. He wasn't competent to be president. He certainly wasn't competent to run. He wasn't competent to do both, and she was just horrible. We got a little more from Kamala because I'm really trying to illustrate how these people, there's just nothing left. There really is nothing left, and that doesn't mean the Republicans are right about everything. But that's why it's a really unfortunate situation we're in right now. I wish we had two healthy parties, even if I disagreed with one of them on policy. It would be nice to have an opposition, let's say, that was principled, that then we could get into a debate with, right? And that makes for a healthier America. Kamala also, because she's on this press tour for her book, she went on a show called Diary of a CEO and was asked about whether Biden actually wanted her to win.
Do you think he wanted you to win the election?
I do, because I was the only one who would be able to preserve his legacy.
But even that's about him.
Well, if I had to assume one of the reasons why he'd want me to win. Yeah.
Man, body language and sort of where you look and pauses and everything. Do you think Biden wanted you to win? Maybe she would have done a better job protecting the Biden legacy, whatever the high hell that is, as if Joe even knew, right? Because he didn't even have anything to do with any of the policies. Maybe she would have done a better job protecting it, but we do know that he was not happy that she forced him out. That was he himself who said it at The View, right? All right, one more from her. I promised to stop smacking you in the face with Kamala Harris on this Monday. Here she is complaining about the call she got from Joe Biden right before she had to debate Donald Trump.
I'm in the hotel room with Doug, with my husband, and the president calls. And I was told that he wanted to call me so that I'd be ready. And I was so sure it was to buck me up and go get him. And he did say that for the first beat. And then he went on to talk about a group of people in Pennsylvania who were saying bad things about me because they heard I was saying bad things about him. And when I hung up the phone, it was unbelievable. And I was angry and deeply disappointed.
You took an underlying message about one's intentions from that, because I would. If someone called me in the lead up to debate prep and said something like that to me, I would assume that they don't want the best for me.
My takeaway is his motivation was all about himself.
In some ways, Kamala, that is exactly why you should have never been president. So look, okay, so whether Biden called you with good intentions or not, it's very likely that it wasn't good intentions, that he did want to trip her up because she was not a good candidate and she did push him out of the Oval Office and everything else. But without even speaking to Biden's intentions right there, basically her reaction is she's very angry before the debate. Guess what, lady? You got to get over it. You want to be the president of the United States? Well, you might get a call every now and again when you're in a little bit of a bind, like right before a debate and some weird stuff is happening and you can't get emotionally dysregulated. You got to take that call from the sitting president of the United States and move on with life. And then obviously we saw someone who was not particularly good at debating or campaigning or much else. I promise you that is it for Kamala Harris. But we're probably going to move on to something worse with Zohran. This is a tough Monday, people. Have I told you? All right. Wild Alaskan, and then we'll get to it. When was the last time you truly trusted the seafood you brought home? For me, it used to be a guessing game. That all changed when I discovered Wild Alaskan Company. Wild Alaskan Company delivers wild-caught and nutrient-dense seafood right to your door. No antibiotics, no GMOs, no additives, just clean fish that supports healthy oceans and fishing communities. I've especially loved cooking their coho salmon. It's rich, flavorful, and so versatile. Every piece is frozen right off the boat to lock in taste, texture, and nutrients like omega-3s. Plus, every order supports sustainable harvesting practices you can feel good about. And if you're not completely satisfied with your first box, they'll refund you in full. No questions asked. Not all fish are the same, guys. Get seafood you can trust at wildalaskan.com/Rubin for $35 off your first box of premium wild-caught seafood. That's wildalaskan.com/Rubin for $35 off your first order. Okay, so before we get into Zohran, we can all take a breath right now. I know I've shown you a bunch of annoying clips so far, but we've got a little something from JD here because, you know, he not only did that Turning Point event last week where he took a ton, it was about a dozen questions seemingly on the fly from a series of kids. Some of them were quite oppositional and everything else, but he is doing a bit of a press tour himself right now. And to the backdrop of what we started talking about today, which is a lot of this immigration stuff, here he is making what I would say is a completely sane argument about what type of community you should want to live in if you are an American. Listen.
Who's out of the house is actually evicted from the house because there are people who are going to pay more for rent. And then what happens is 20 people move into a 3-bedroom house, 20 people from a totally different culture, totally different ways of interacting. Again, we can respect their dignity while also being angry at the Biden administration for letting that situation happen and recognizing that their next door neighbors are going to say, well, wait a second. What is going on here? I don't know these people. They don't speak the same language that I do. And because there are 20 in the house next door, it's a little bit rowdier than it was when there was just a family of 4, a family of 5. It is totally reasonable and acceptable for American citizens to look at their next door neighbors and say, I want to live next to people who I have something in common with. I don't want to live next to 4 families of strangers.
Okay, so that's why JD has become so good. He can just explain something in a very simple kind of human and not talking points way that's right. And he's hitting, of course, 2 issues there. One is the sort of rent-controlled issue that if you have these houses and these apartments that are controlled by the government, let's say you freeze their rent and you're giving them to certain sets of people, often based on skin color or whatever else, then they are going to import a whole bunch of other people that are going to live there. You're going to change the dynamics one way. And then, of course, the other part is that it's directly connected to illegal immigration. I'll give you a personal example of this, which is that during COVID, my sister and her husband, and then 1 child, now they have 3, they were living in a building on the Upper West Side that was probably like a 30, 40-story building, and half the building was rent stabilized or rent controlled, and half the building was just market price. So my sister used to pay whatever it was, like $4,000 or $5,000 for a month for a 1-bedroom apartment. And she always used to call it her little shoebox. It was a tiny little apartment, and that's what they charged for it. Then there were half the people in that very same building who often had nicer apartments on higher floors with better views and all of those things that paid just a couple $100. And they had been doing it for years and years, and it had become intergenerational. And then, of course, during COVID, it started getting very weird because there was much more crime and everything else. Yada, yada, yada. She now moved with her husband and 3 kids to the free state of Florida, where they're flourishing. But just that in and of itself, you really have to understand what that does. If you have a building that's split half and half, I just want to help poor people. I want to help immigrants. Okay, blah, blah, blah. And then you're punishing the other people who are there because they're kind of suckers for subsidizing these other people. Anyway, Zohran Mamdani, who may tomorrow be the elected leader of New York City, which is completely psychotic, he heard that very clip that we showed you just then of JD talking about English speakers, which of course is true. It just is true. If your neighbors, just think about it this way. If you are living in a community and your neighbors on one side, they speak Spanish and the neighbors on the other side speak French and you only speak English because this is America, how much communication can you have with these people? How many times are you going to have them over for dinner? How many times are you going to share something? Or when they come over because they want butter, if you don't even know how to say butter in French. How do you say butter in French? That one seems like it would be fairly obvious, but I'm not even sure. How do you say butter in Spanish? I'm not even sure of that. But the point is that language is like liquid, right? Like you just... If you are in a community with people that you cannot communicate with, then over time, that's not good. Butter in French, le beurre. Okay, oh, le beurre. You want the le beurre? Okay. So here's Zohran commenting on JD's remarks.
This language from the vice president of this country, it betrays so much of the promise that we have as a nation. And I stand here in Diversity Plaza proud to be an immigrant New Yorker. Proud to call this borough my home, a borough where there are more languages spoken than most cities in the world, and proud to be on the precipice of becoming the first immigrant mayor of the city in generations.
But note you're speaking English, fuckface. We'll have more on you speaking other languages in just a second. But the problem is, it's fine if people speak other languages, right? It's just fine. And sometimes people, especially back in the day, people immigrated here and you had older people who it was really too late for them to learn another language. But you know what they did? They assimilated and encouraged the next generation down to learn English and the next generation down to learn English and be part of the system. But you guys seem to want to thrive in a place that we will all be cordoned off into our own languages and everything else. You know, even here in Florida, there are issues around this. We took the kids to the park this weekend, a little park by us, which is a very nice park, and there were tons and tons of people there. It was a beautiful weekend here in Miami. And I did hear tons of different languages. Now, it's not bad in and of itself, except then it's like, okay, if the parent doesn't speak the language, then how do you make friends with the parent so that the kids can have a play date together? Like it does, there is something about the fabric of society that speaking a common language, this is so low bar stuff. But here's Zohran's new ad, and you're going to have to do the translation yourself.
كعمدة رح جمد الإيجارات لأكثر من 2,000,000 شخص وخلي الباصات سريعة ومجانا وأضمن رعاية الأطفال شاملة لكل العائلات.
ويمكن ما فيني أقنع عمك إنه الكنافة النابلسية بستانواي أطيب من نيوجيرسي، بس بوعدكم إني رح أشتغل بكل جهدي لأسهل عليكم بفتح مشاريعكم الصغيرة وتدفعوا إيجاركم وتبنوا مستقبلكم في مدينة نيويورك.
التصويت المبكر مفتوح الآن حتى 2 نوفمبر ويوم الانتخابات يوم 4.
It's just perfect. The Arabic, the Palestinian language, the Arabic language, the Palestinian flag, the Arabic language, the smiling while he's going to freeze the rents. Like, okay, good luck. And if that, all of that, why do you love the differences, man? You're supposed to love the things that bring us together. But here he is doubling down that New York City will remain a sanctuary city. Hint, if you live in New York City, leave today. Pack up, go now, please.
What's your plan?
I think first, to be clear, coordination with ICE is akin to capitulating to Donald Trump's agenda. That's what we've seen. This is a reckless entity that cares little for the rule of law and even less for the people that it's supposed to serve. And it has transformed the sites of what used to be regular court appearances for many New Yorkers at 26 Federal Plaza into a place where many go fearing that it will be the last time that they'll be standing in their own city. And it is critically important that we have a city that makes clear it's proud of its sanctuary city status.
All right, guys, look, if we lived in a sane country, and I know in many ways Trump has saned us up a bit, but in a sane world, this guy should not even be allowed to run for president. Well, he's going to run for president probably too, but should not be allowed to run for mayor. And the reason for that is everything that he stands for is antithetical to the Constitution of the United States. The notion of a sanctuary city in and of itself should be illegal. It is illegal, right? It is illegal to come here illegally. The idea that certain cities then are like, okay, we will now give you a bunch of stuff, that should be just a non-starter as to whether someone can be on the ballot or not. On top of his support for terrorists and the fact that he just doesn't like America that much and that he's going to step on the builders, literally the builders, the people who build buildings, he's going to step on them and say, you can only charge this much for an apartment, and we're going to freeze it, and all the things are going to be free. So we're going to keep taxing those who create. I just read, we're going to probably cover it tomorrow, but I just read a story this morning in the New York Post that right now there are about 1 million New Yorkers who are ready to flee. 1 million New Yorkers who are ready to flee if he wins tomorrow. That is just absolutely crazy. It's crazy, and yet it's completely obvious. Trump went on 60 Minutes, and he was asked about Zohran last night. Again, that's just Trump, his ability to be honest and everything else. Silly comment about being more handsome, but he's right. And it's like nobody. How many times have we talked about Cuomo on this show, particularly during COVID? I don't think I've ever said anything nice about him. Last week, he finally, or a week and a half ago, he finally at the debate woke up. I don't even think he really wants to be mayor, but this is what they've been left with. Do I think he'd be a horrible mayor? No. Do I think he kind of loves New York for all of his flaws? Yeah. But at least he's not a communist. And what will happen when the federal government is not, well, first off, there's going to be a couple things. So Mamdani is now saying it will be a sanctuary city. It will remain a sanctuary city, and we're not going to work with ICE. That means Trump is absolutely going to send in ICE. So we will see more violence that way, which is exactly what Mamdani wants, of course. And then there's the thing about the money. If they're going to cut federal funds, and Trump is totally right. You're going to send a bunch of federal funds to make up for the income that the state lost because they elected a communist. So the tax base disappeared and went to Florida. Again, it'll all be the riches for this place, but this isn't the way it's supposed to be. Let's jump to another Democrat, because Barack Obama just in the last couple of days officially endorsed mamdani. I mean, it's just, when I tell you there's nothing left with the party, there's just nothing left. Fetterman, if you're watching today, you can probably just walk across the aisle or the hallway over at the offices, the Senate offices over there, and meet with a Republican and switch parties. You could do it today if you want. But here's Obama giving a speech and going after Trump for the ballroom. He's supporting Virginia governor candidate Abigail Spanberger. But just watch this video and like just see how he's just lost his juice. He just has no mojo anymore.
And as for the president, he has been focused on critical issues like paving over the Rose Garden so folks don't get mud on their shoes, and gold plating the Oval Office and building a $300 million ballroom. So Virginia, here's the good news. If you can't visit a doctor, don't worry. He will save you a dance. And Abigail doesn't just believe in working with everybody, she also believes, and this is really important, in listening to everybody, whether they voted for her or not. Because she knows that if we want to make progress on the things that we care about, we have to be able to disagree without calling each other nasty names or demonizing each other.
Oh, is that what we have to do, Barack? I mean, you do that all the time. We'll get to that in just a second. Abigail Spanberger is still endorsing Jay Jones. He's the guy that was threatening, basically in a text message, that other people's children should be killed so they learn what bad policies lead to. Also, it's interesting because Barack, you know who you're campaigning against? He's campaigning against Winsome Sears in Virginia, who happens to be a black woman. So you may remember the day or two before the presidential election when he gave that awful speech basically trying to guilt black men into voting for a black woman. But in this case, he doesn't like the black woman because she's a Republican, so she ain't black. Thus, he is supporting the white woman. And according to the polls right now, they're in an absolute dead heat. Spangberger, it's kind of a funny name, Spamberger, and Sears, it's basically 42 to 41%. But Barack Obama, what do you say? So don't lie, Barack Obama. Let's not use race as a wedge and all of that. Well, you guys might remember this day before the election.
Maybe you're Muslim American or Jewish American, and you are heartbroken and furious about the ongoing bloodshed in the Middle East and worried about the rise of anti-Semitism. Why would you place your faith in somebody who instituted a so-called Muslim ban, who sat down for pleasantries with Holocaust deniers, who said that there were very fine people on both sides of a white supremacist rally?
All right, so you get it. Don't listen to Barack Obama anymore. It wasn't a white supremacist rally. Donald Trump completely condemned the neo-Nazis and the white supremacists. It's the biggest hoax. And the fact that that guy put it out there today before election, you get all of that. Everything with him is a lie. So the Democrats, it's like, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? Are you going to keep going crazy? Or, John Fetterman, will you walk across the hallway and maybe go the other direction?
Well, I mean, a lot of people forget or doesn't understand the state that I am honored to represent. Pennsylvania, perhaps the most purple state in the country. And I am not just representing Democrats. I'm representing 13 million Pennsylvanians. And now I refuse to call members of the other team as fascists or Nazis or those other kinds of things. Because if you do, then that implies that well, the people that vote for them must be the same as too, and that's absolutely not true. I know and love many of people that voted for the president, and they're not fascists, they're not Nazis, they're not here to destroy our democracy.
Yeah, all right, you get it with him. I don't have to overanalyze it. It's also kind of striking me now that he just seems like a decent human being beyond anything else, like for whatever his flaws may be, and he still can get into some of the Democrat stuff, which is why he still considers himself a Democrat. Well, like he does strike me as like kind of decent, and I just don't even think there's a home for decent people in the Democrat Party anymore. I don't. So we're almost there. So which way? Democrats, which way America? That really is the question. Do you want to go this way? Here's a man who looks like a Q-tip.
Most of our Constitution, even the amendments, have been written and ratified exclusively by white, rich, land-holding men, right? There's not a single state that had a majority legislature of women that has ratified a single amendment in the current Constitution, right? So starting from the beginning and pulling that thread all the way through now, this is a white man's document, and it looks like it. So when you ask, like, is the Constitution working as intended? Pretty much. And the intention was to crush the rights and democratic participation of everybody who was not a rich white person.
I honestly didn't even listen to a word he just said there. What is the deal with the hair pick while you're on television? I mean, what? Look, what? I don't even have, wait, where is it? It's over here. I don't even have a hair pick. What is this that you gave me here? We got these. What are these? These are they're little eyelash rubbers. But like, why, man? So whatever, I get it. Okay, fine. He doesn't like the Constitution. There are better people out there. There are better ideas. And there's a better horizon, and we just got to get on board. Elon Musk.
I'll stand, actually. There are a lot of negative things in the world. There's a lot of terrible things that are happening all over the world, all the time. There are lots of problems that need to get solved. There's lots of things that are miserable and kind of get you down. But life cannot just be about solving one miserable problem after another. That can't be the only thing. There need to be things that inspire you, that make you glad to wake up in the morning and be part of humanity. Earth is the cradle of humanity, but you cannot stay in the cradle forever. It is time to go forth, become a star-faring civilization, be out there among the stars, expand the scope and scale of human consciousness. I find that incredibly exciting. That makes me glad to be alive.
Isn't that something? Well, especially with the backdrop of the Interstellar music, which if you haven't watched Interstellar in a while, it's just so spectacular. But there are so many cool things on the horizon, right? Like there's AI revolution, that life will be interplanetary. Like if you are under 20, there's a decent chance you're going to get to go to another planet. Like there's so many freaking amazing things out there, and we are lost in all of the worst things. And tomorrow is a absolutely seminal day in the history of the United States of America. There is an election that I would say a communist, as Donald Trump pointed out, there's no point in calling him a socialist, a communist who is at the very least jihad adjacent, and I think it's probably closer than that, may become, only 25 years after 9/11, may become the mayor of New York City, which has the largest Jewish population outside of Tel Aviv, but it has nothing to do with the Jews in a sense. It's like, which way is America going to go? Is what was once our #1 city is now going to completely go the wrong way? Everything that made it into the greatest city in the world, where Ellis Island then welcomed in all sorts of people, the huddled masses yearning to be free, will now become the very thing that those huddled masses fled. That's what we're on the verge of. So we will see what happens tomorrow. But I am very excited to say that joining us live at the top of the show tomorrow at 11 a.m. will be New York City's great mayor, the mayor of the United States of America, Rudy Giuliani, a man who cleaned up that city after a previous Democrat socialist, David Dinkins, nearly destroyed it in the early 90s. Rudy will be joining us for the first half of tomorrow's show, which is pretty great that we got him on Election Day, and pray for New York. And if you're out there, if you live in New York, this is your moment. This is your moment. And then, yes, I know we're going to get a million New Yorkers, and hopefully they will vote the right way here in Florida, and they'll bring their skills and their hopefully their values, if their values are right, and they will bring their economic interests and all of those things. And this place will be stronger, but it shouldn't be this way. So we'll leave that there. We got a post-game show, 30 seconds, rubinreport.locals.com. And reminder, Copal is now Sunset Magazine's award winner for Best Reposado. You can get yours now at drinkcopal.com. All right, see you tomorrow.
Happy Halloween, kids, and remember, say thank you.
So, just to give you a sense for what's happened, this all began in 2020. In the last 5 years, hundreds of victims have come forward. Now there's lawsuits on behalf of nearly 300 victims and 25 lawsuits suing Pornhub, including class actions on behalf of tens of thousands of child victims. They've been criminally charged by the U.S. government. They've lost all credit card processing. Visa, MasterCard, and Discover cut them off. They actually had to take down 91% of the entire website, had to be taken down in what Financial Times called probably the biggest takedown of content in internet history.
All right, so we are here at the ARC conference, and I've been talking to all sorts of political leaders and thinkers and philosophers and all of those types about the civilizational struggle that we're in. You come at it from a slightly different place, from really focusing on human trafficking and pornography, but that fits within this civilizational struggle that we're going through. So I guess first, how did you get involved in all of that? And then we'll
In the context, yeah, sure. In the context of now 18 years in the fight against sex trafficking, about 5 years ago, I was investigating the intersection between what I call the big porn industry and sex trafficking and child sexual abuse, and was paying attention to the headlines and heard some really horrific stories of child abuse that was taking place on Pornhub. It was being monetized and globally distributed, and specifically the case of a 15-year-old girl from Florida who was missing for an entire year, and she was finally found when her distraught mother was tipped off by a Pornhub user that he recognized her daughter on the site. And she was found in 58 videos being raped for profit on Pornhub. And so in the context of my work, I asked a question. How in the world was this happening? And it wasn't just that victim, it was numerous victims that we were hearing about. And it was a question of how did this happen? And I began to look at the big porn tube sites. These are the YouTubes of porn. I tested the upload system by, recording the rug and in my room and the keyboard and uploaded, and found out that they were not verifying age or consent. So anybody anywhere in the world could upload a sex video to Pornhub in under 10 minutes. Only an email address was required, no ID.
So literally no controls. So
No
a
control.
15-year-old kid themselves could be uploading this.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And they were.
Now, I
They
assume
are.
that's against whatever their terms of service might be, but that doesn't stop anyone.
It was
from
just a
doing it.
show, right? It was the fine print terms of service, check a box here,
Yeah.
but it was a free-for-all, and that's how the site actually became infested with videos of real sexual crime. And I felt like we need to sound the alarm on this, because it was Pornhub, but it was also its sister sites that were owned by the same parent company. These are some of the most popular porn tube sites in the world are owned by this company: RedTube, GayTube, YouPorn, XTube, ExtremeTube, on and on and on. And these sites are infested with real sexual crime. And so we had to really sound the alarm on what was going on.
So as you guys uncover some of this stuff, what is the response from PornTube and the parent company as it relates to, putting aside what someone might feel about porn in general, which I would like to discuss with you, as it relates to child porn? I mean, I don't know any sane person that thinks that is okay, so.
Right. Well, they were kind of deflecting. So as all this was coming to light, there was some traction, a lot of traction around, calling them out for what was happening. I was able to start a petition that started to go viral. We got, 2.3 million signatures from every country in the world. And as this was happening, victims were coming forward on a regular basis, and whistleblowers from inside the company were coming forward to reveal the inner workings of how this all happened. The media started to pay attention. Hundreds of articles began to be written about this, and their response, instead of to recognize that there was a serious problem, was to try to deflect, was try to do crazy PR stunts to try to take the attention away from what was actually going on. But we kept at it, and happy to say that we've made a lot of progress in holding them accountable for the mass distribution of sexual crime. So, just to give you a sense for what's happened, this all began in 2020. In the last 5 years, hundreds of victims have come forward. Now there's lawsuits on behalf of nearly 300 victims and 25 lawsuits suing Pornhub, including class actions on behalf of tens of thousands of child victims. They've been criminally charged by the U.S. government. They've lost all credit card processing. Visa, MasterCard, and Discover cut them off. They actually had to take down 91% of the entire website had to be taken down in what Financial Times called probably the biggest takedown of content in internet history.
Wow. So 91% of the content
91%.
was underage?
It was unverified. So
Yeah.
they had no idea whether this was a 16-year-old or an 18-year-old, whether it was rough sex or rape, whether it was consensually recorded and non-consensually uploaded. And what we understood was the site was actually infested with illegal content.
Right.
And so that is why they had to take down that much content. They went from 56 million pieces of content in 2020 to 5.2 million today.
Wow.
And we're not done yet because there's still unverified content on the site.
So that's going after the distributor in effect. But what about the people? Now, I assume some of it is just, in essence, kids uploading it themselves. And then there's obviously some legal issues there. I don't know if you go after parents or something like that. And then what about the people that are actually involved in trafficking and getting these kids involved in it?
Yes. So we believe in accountability. We need justice to be served in order to deter future abusers. And that includes those who are actually uploading the content. In this case, this is a free porn tube site. The ones that are actually profiting from and doing the most damage in this case with regard to distribution is the site itself. Because, at the time in 2020, they had 170 million visits per day. They had 56 billion visits that year. They had enough content uploaded every year. It would take 169 years to watch if you put those videos back to back. And so what victims say, it's one thing to be raped, right? But then that's filmed and then it's uploaded to the mainstream site on the surface web like Pornhub, where millions of people had an opportunity to download that content. So they had a download button on every single video, and to download that content, then to re-upload it again and again and again, where they understood the worst moment of their life would live in perpetuity online forever.
So this is going to sound naive or something, but who are they being raped by? Like, these are traffickers that are getting basically young kids in essence, and don't they think they're going to be caught? I mean,
well, they could anonymously upload. So they could even use a VPN to upload. So at the time, could be impossible to actually locate them. There was some who were uploading and they were even, verifying themselves as uploaders to monetize the content on Pornhub. So I'll give you an example. There was a man named Rocky Shea Franklin in Alabama, and he had drugged and overpowered a 12-year-old boy. And he filmed the assaults of this little boy, and he uploaded 23 of those videos to Pornhub with titles that actually indicated that this was abuse. Like, Uncle's Secret and Young Ass's Best. I mean, titles that would clearly show that this was abuse. And he verified himself. So he actually showed his ID, and they actually apprehended him, and he's in prison for 40 years for what he did. But Pornhub, that globally distributed, police actually went after Pornhub and demanded that they take those videos down, and they were ignored for 7 months while that boy's rape videos were downloaded and uploaded and got hundreds of thousands of views.
So how is it that Pornhub is still up at this point if they've done so much clearly illegal stuff? I mean, it doesn't sound like they're hiding it to that.
Well, the wheels of justice turn slowly. I mean, but they are turning, and thankfully, 91% of the site has been taken down, and they've faced serious repercussions. I mean, the CEO and the COO were forced to resign. The secret majority shareholder was exposed. They're personally being sued. That little boy that I just mentioned, he's now 18, and he's suing the company along with many other victims. And the company was actually sold as a distressed asset because of the repercussions of what's happened. But we're not done yet because we want to see justice fully served. And what that means is, justice to the full extent of the law, both criminally and civilly. And that's so important to be a deterrent to future abusers.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, for these corporate traffickers, is what I call them, it's a risk-benefit calculation for them. And we have to increase risk and then eliminate profitability. And when we do that, we're going to see a transformation of this industry to make the internet a safer place.
Do you see any of the controls that they're putting in as working? I'm in Florida, where now I think you have to have an ID to go on some of these sites. That at least provides some protection, I suppose, on the user end. That's not doing anything on the end that you're talking about. But I assume you find some value in some of that kind of stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, children are being exploited in front of the screen, and they're being exploited behind the screen. And victims are being exploited on both sides for profit, because the business model of free user-generated porn is to sell ad impressions. So it's all about traffic. That's what they care about the most is content and traffic.
Have you guys gone for the advertisers too?
They have no mainstream legitimate advertisers anymore. Nobody will, even KY Jelly is Astroglide will not advertise. I mean, they even had, at one point, they had Kraft Heinz Unilever advertising. They were called out. They stopped. So, they don't have legitimate mainstream advertisers anymore, thank goodness, because that's another repercussion of what's happened. They've lost mainstream business partners. But the business model relies on selling 4.6 billion ad impressions every single day on Pornhub. And that's why they need that traffic. But I think these controls are important because children have free access to the site too, right? Where their sex education as young as 8, 9, 10, 11 years old is not just violent, hardcore, legal pornography, but is actually crime scenes that they're witnessing from such a young age that's shaping their sexual template for life, which is really harmful. So the solution at scale for this issue is age and consent verification. So we need age verification for those who are accessing the site, just like, you said Florida has done, Texas has done. Currently, the Supreme Court is hearing and going to decide whether it's okay for states to implement age verification to protect children. But we also need age and consent verification for those who are in those user-generated porn videos as well. Right. And when that happens, then you're going to see this prevented on these sites.
What do you think of the argument when the Florida thing happened? I read an article that I thought was an interesting philosophical point that the verification should be done at the user end, meaning it should be done by the parents on the device rather than putting it on the site, because the site can only control that site. But if the parents were fully involved, and kids are smart and they can always get around things, I fully accept that. But if the parent were fully involved in paying attention to what's on the kid's phone or what access was there, that probably is really the only way to deal with it.
I don't agree with that's the only way. I say both and. When we think about safety, like when we're driving a car, right? We have a seatbelt, we have a roll bar, we have airbags, we have many different ways that we try to protect ourselves in that situation. I think the same thing could apply to protecting kids from porn exposure. I mean, that's one line of defense, but it doesn't work all the time. And I mean, there's a lot of children that don't have attentive parents that are able to watch them 24/7 that even could take the time to understand the technology for device level of verification of age. And again, kids are smart. They can get around that. So I think we need that, but we also need age verification at the site level, third-party age verification, because I would never want anybody to hand over an ID to a porn site like
Right.
Pornhub.
So that the article that I read was basically arguing that then, okay, congratulations, you've just handed them your ID.
Well, we have third party. So I think that fear is based on a misconception about how this could actually happen and what technology we have available to safely, with respect to privacy, be able to verify age on a site like that. So we have third party companies. I mean, one of them is called Yoti. And in 1 second, they can do a biometric facial scan that doesn't even store the actual photo of a person, but uses pixels and numbers. And that technology is trained on thousands, if not millions of other faces. And they can determine in 1 second with over 99% accuracy, the age of a person that would be using the site. They can store that as a token, and that could be used on multiple adult sites. And so, we have ability like that to be able to age verify. And it's not a huge inconvenience for an adult to go through that in order to protect countless children from exposure to this kind of content.
So in your vision of a future that would, let's say, make sense through the lens that you're talking about this, you'd have the processes like you just described on both ends, meaning the user end and the corporate end, or whatever you want to call that. And then basically you're okay with pornography existing.
Yeah. I mean, look, it's when it's legal and it's consensual, really, truly consensual. For me, that's none of my business. My work is to protect children from access and to protect victims and children from being exploited in that content. In the United States, pornography, if it's done that way, is legal, right? And it's constitutionally protected. So, for me, that's none of my business. To each his own in that regard. But we need to, for sure, draw the red line, ensuring that the best safeguards that we possibly can to ensure that children are not being exposed to this content.
Is the biggest hurdle you have to face that nobody wants to talk about this because it's kind of embarrassing and weird and sex is uncomfortable to talk about and everything else?
It's one of them. I mean, people are uncomfortable talking about porn and talking about rape and trafficking and child abuse and all of these things. And I think that that does allow this to continue kind of hidden in the shadows. I mean, that's why Pornhub was purchased for $2,750 in 2007 is when it launched online. By 2020, it was the 5th most visited website in the world. And this entire time, victims were being exploited for profit. It was hidden in plain sight. And it wasn't until 2020 that this began to get attention and traction so that we can actually hold those responsible to account and help stop this in the future. And I think it's partly because of what you just said, is that people are scared to talk about it. I mean, the interesting thing is that it may feel like it's this quiet corner of the internet, but it's such a huge swath of it, right? And most people have been, exposed to it or consumers of it, but afraid to talk about it. A lot of people, even struggle with compulsive porn use that they don't want to talk about because they're embarrassed or there's shame involved with that as well. And that's a huge problem, especially for, young people who are growing up on exposure to pornography. And so, yeah, I think it's a huge issue in society, but it's definitely not talked about enough. And we need to kind of break those barriers and just be able to discuss this because it's really affecting so many lives.
Let me ask you one other thing, and then we'll finish this up on the main stage. So I don't want to ask you everything right now. But do you see a difference in attitudes as it relates to some of these controls when it comes to America versus Europe?
Interesting. I mean, there's a movement. I feel like there's a movement now that it's not just in the United States, but we've seen it in Canada and the UK, and I've seen it across Europe for specifically protecting kids from accessing this content. Unfortunately, I haven't also seen the same passion for implementing the controls we need for those who are in the videos. I don't think people quite understand the dangers of user-generated pornographic content where these sites are getting infested with illegal content. But I think we'll get there, but at least it's a start. I see a huge, 17 states in the United States have implemented age verification for users. We're seeing that push in the UK. We're seeing it in Germany and France and Canada. So I think that there's this kind of global movement to understand the harms and try to protect against it.
We will continue this on the main stage shortly.
If you're looking for an unfiltered lens into the world of tomorrow, go check out our tech playlist. And if you want to watch full interviews on a wide variety of topics, watch our full episode playlist, all right over here. And to get notified of all future videos, be sure to subscribe and click the notification bell.